Today let's talk about solving of quadratic equations, and especially by the use of the square method. And I would like to put across the following statements regarding the same. Number one, for you to solve a quadratic equation by the use of completing the square method, you will have to create a perfect square trinomial. And maybe you would ask me, what is a trinomial? A trinomial, I would say, is an algebraic expression that consists of three terms. For example, you have x squared plus maybe 2x plus 1. That's a trinomial. It has three terms. You have the first term, you have the second term, and then you have three terms. But then again, this trinomial has to be a perfect square. And we would say that a trinomial is said to be a perfect square trinomial if you can factor it to a binomial multiplied by the binomial itself. And what is a binomial? A binomial is an algebraic expression that consists of two terms. So a binomial has two terms and a trinomial has three terms. Just from the word by means two. By means two, while tri means three. So you have one which is two terms, and then you multiply by itself. And a trinomial is three terms. So you have a binomial, for example, x plus 1, and then you multiply by itself. So it means you have to multiply by x plus 1 for you to get a perfect square trinomial. And then if you multiply this, you will end up getting an expression, an algebraic expression, which has three terms. So up to there, I hope we are together. So for you to solve a quadratic equation by the use of completing the square method, in the process, you will be creating a perfect square trinomial. And if, for example, you've ended up getting, for example, where we have like here x plus 1 and then x plus 1, this is the same as x plus 1 squared. So from your equation that you will have, you will work it out, and then at the end, you should create a perfect square trinomial. So at the end, you will see maybe something like this. Then maybe you might ask yourself, why? How is this a trinomial? It will be a trinomial because if you expand and multiply this, we have x plus 1 squared. If you multiply it, it's the same as x plus 1 multiplied by x plus 1, which is this. So if we multiply these two, we will end up getting an algebraic expression which is three terms. So I hope we are together. You are starting with an algebraic expression, and then you have to work on it until you create a perfect square trinomial, and you will create something which looks like this, and then you will be equating it. For example, if you create something like that, you'll be equating it to what you'll be having from the way you've been working on the equation that you have. And before we even continue to examples and a lot of things, I would like us to derive the quadratic formula, which we earlier said from my previous video. Maybe you can watch it, which we said the quadratic formula is like this: x is equals to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all this all over 2a. So I'd like us to derive this formula by the use of completing the square method, and we are going to use the quadratic expression or equation, which is this: ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So we have our quadratic equation like that, and from this we have to derive this by the use of completing the square method, and this is how we go about it. So for you to solve or to derive the quadratic formula, or rather to solve for the value of x from the quadratic equation by the use of completing the square method, this is how you go about it. We have ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. And we know when we use the completing the square method, we will be creating the perfect square in the process. So the first step is for you to solve a quadratic equation by the use of completing the square method. Number one, you have to make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. The coefficient of x squared here should be 1. So for us to make it 1, we have to divide everything. We have to divide everything by a. Okay? So here we'll have x squared plus b all over a x plus c all over a is equals to 0. Then from there, on your left hand side, make sure that whatever you are left with it there is the two terms which have x's with themselves. We want only the terms which have x's on the left hand side. Then the rest can go to the other side. X squared plus b all over a x plus c all over a is equals to 0. We have to be left with only the terms which have x's on our left hand side. The rest goes to the other side. So for you to do that, you have to take this term to this side. And you will have x squared plus b all over a x is equals to negative c all over a. Now I have to add, and this is the procedure of solving any quadratic equation by the use of completing the square method. These are the steps that you'll be using, but now we are using it to derive the quadratic formula. So from this stage, we have to add the third term on the left hand side. And then whatever we are going to add, we have to add it on the other side. And the third term, you get it from where? You get it from, you have to take b, the value of b, all over 2, and then you square it. For example, if you add an equation like this, x squared plus 2x plus 1, your value of b would have been 2. And therefore, the third term to add on the left-hand side, and then you add it again on the other side, would have been 2 all over 2, and then you square, for example. But for this case, our value for b is all this, b over a. So we will add b all over a, we will add b all over a divided by 2, and then we square. Okay? And this is the same as b all over a divided by 2, right? All over 1, and then we can square. And this is the same as b all over a multiplied by 1 all over 2, and then we square. This is equals to b all over 2a squared. This is a term that we are going to add on both sides. So we'll have x squared plus b all over ax plus b divided by 2a squared is equals to negative c all over a plus b all over 2a squared. You remember, if you can check here, the third term doesn't have x. Why? Because we said the third term will be resulting from b all over 2 squared. So you have to get the value for b, divide by 2, and then you square. And then it happened that our value for b is b all over a. And then we divided by 2, then you square. Right. Once you are there, please ignore the middle term. Ignore this term. All this. Ignore it. You can ignore this. Only that one. And then you will take this term and this one. If you check the two of them, they have something in common. All of them have squares. You can see x as a square, b all over 2a as a square. And what we are going to do is we will take x, then we add b all over 2a, and the two we put them under the same square. Alright? Okay, then is equals to minus c all over a plus this one we can square. We have b squared all over 4a squared, right? And here we'll have x plus b all over 2a squared is equals to, what is the LCM of a and 4a squared? It's 4a squared. 4a squared divided by 4a squared divided by a is 4a multiplied by minus c. We'll get minus 4ac, then plus b squared, right? I hope at least now you can start seeing something. Okay, so here we'll have x plus b all over 2a is equals to b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Are we together up to there? Okay. Now, for us to get the value of x, what can we do? We have x plus b divided by 2a and then into square is equals to b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. For us to remain with just x, we have to get the square root of both sides, right? Okay. And now we have x plus b all over 2a squared is equals to b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Okay. For us to get the value of x, we have to find the square root of both sides. So we have to get the square root there and the square root there. So here we'll have x plus b all over 2a is equals to the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over the square root of 4a squared. Okay, here we have x plus b all over 2a is equals to, what is the square root of b squared minus 4ac? Should be plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all these all over 2a. The square root of 4a squared is 2a. Now we need only x on the left hand side and we have to take b divided by 2a to the other side, and we'll have x is equals to minus b all over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all this divided by 2a. This is equals to 2a and 2a is common, so we'll have 2a, then minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And therefore, you've derived the quadratic formula, whereby x is equals to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then divide by 2a. So we've derived the quadratic formula by the use of completing the square method. And next, now we'll be doing examples on how to solve quadratic equations by the use of completing the square method. Till next time, bye.